So I'll accept a motion on Article 11 to accept the report of the town meeting, which is what you have in front of you. I have a motion. Jackie Walker moves the article. Is there a second, please? Many seconds. Alan Blood. Is there any discussion of the article? Article 11, to accept the report of the last town meeting. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and you have passed that motion unanimously. Sorry? Who made the jack? Tony. It was seconded by Article 12. Will the town accept the auditor's report? Will somebody please get the article on the floor? Okay.
I will move that the
name. Holler your name out.
Scott Henry. I will move that the town accept the auditor's report.
And we have a second. Got that? Okay. Any discussion of the auditor's report? Any questions about the auditor's report? Are you ready for the question? We have a question. Take the mic, please, and hold it right up to your chin.
Who is the auditor?
The town is queried as to the auditor position.
The auditing firm of Mudgett, Jeanette, and Crowe Wisner do our audit every year. We're required to have a full audit because of the federal monies involved in the various improvements in town.
And their report is in your town meeting?
Well, actually, there's a letter of opinion from them in the town report. The actual audit is on the town website. It's about a 60-page document, and we have copies available for anyone that would like to read it.
Are you ready for the question? Any other discussion of the auditor's report? Article 12. All in favor of Article 12 to accept the auditor's report, please say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You've passed Article 12 unanimously. At this point, I'm going to turn the meeting over to the Select Board. They have a special presentation they want to make, and then we will return to Article 13. So we have a very brief temporary recess. We had scheduled to have the Person of the Year announced at 1 o'clock, but just because of the way things have been sequenced, we're starting a little bit earlier than we anticipated, and so we thought we would go ahead and do that now because there's a significant number of people here, as well as the Person of the Year is here. This is a person who is not well known to me personally, but has been a lifelong resident of the area, and sort of not typically the Person of the Year. They're not actually a resident of Putney, but they're very closely associated with Putney, have played an integral role in the School for Forest program, works closely with students here at the school in a number of different capacities, and also has played a significant role in sort of keeping an eye out for townspeople and other folks just generally in the area who have needs of any type, caring for elderly folks and being there as a close associate to people. And so we have a few folks who want to do brief presentations, and or first Scott Henry is going to read a letter that was submitted in lieu of his being unable to be here from Scott will take it from there.
From Dan Morris. I am honored to write about my friend Ramona Lawrence. I met I met Ramona when I was 16 years old, and our friendship is now 32 years strong. Ramona and I worked together at the old Putney Nursery, tending the wildflower gardens. We've shared a lifelong passion of wildflowers since. I remember one hot summer day, we were weeding in a garden at the nursery. Things were getting a little dull. And Ramona asked me if I had noticed the flock of birds on the telephone wires and how much they looked like musical notes on a 5-line staff. Ramona suggested we sing the notes that the birds represented, and that's just what we did. As the birds would come and go, our song would change. And there we were, singing our hearts out in the summer sun until the last bird flew away. Needless to say, we did not pursue a career in music, and it's no wonder that the birds had flown away. That day, Ramona had planted a seed in me that I carry to this day, one that has sprouted to become a song in my heart. She gave me the ability to see the beauty in nature that is always around us. Ramona had opened my eyes and ears, filled my spirit with a sense of awareness that I have never felt before. Ramona has a connection with nature so strong that I dare say she is a saint. Saint Ramona. I like the sound of that. Ramona is one of the most important people in my life, continues to inspire me to be a better person. Her constant seeking and sharing of knowledge, her endless yearning to express her tenderness with animals, her connection with nature, and her gentle way with people of all ages, especially children, are just a few of Ramona's attributes that I admire. Somebody clever once said it takes a village to raise a child, and that may be true, but it takes a person like Ramona Lawrence to make a village, our village, the village of Putney. Ramona, I thank you all. Thank you for all that you have given me. Having you as a role model has made me a better person. And know that I love and adore thee, your friend, Dan Morris.
Come on up, Ramona, come on up. With no objection, we'll invite Ramona into the sacred territory of townspeople.
We also have a couple other people here who would like to make statements briefly. Angela?
Thank you very much. I am really honored. And you've made my day, made my year. But I think I have got just as much from my friends, from nature, and from the children working with kids here. Children see things different than grown-ups do. And as long as you can see things through children's eyes, you're going to stay young. Lord, I need a lot of help doing that. And I'm also going to pin Mr. Morris's ears back. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
My name is Evan Fennell. Ashley Dirks. I'm Lil Short. I'm Pat Hammond. I'm Carl Grumby. We are proud to congratulate Ramona for the Person of the Year, and she came in and did 2 4-wins for us, even though she didn't have to. She sets it for the above. She's a really good role model for everybody, and she makes like everybody laugh.
Thank you, Ramona.
Well, I think Dan's letter really says it all.
don't know what I can add to that. But I guess I'm speaking on behalf of the School Forest Committee. And I think it's so appropriate that Ramona, who doesn't live in Putney, lives in Dummerston, but I'll bet she spent more time in the school forest than any of you here or any other buddies, either by herself, communing with nature, but more commonly with groups of people, particularly children, sharing her wonderful love of the outdoors and her immense knowledge of the outdoors. If you need a fern identified, if you need a plant identified, Ramona is the person to see. So we thank her, and we think this is a wonderful honor for her to have for the work that she's been doing with the School Forest Committee. Thank you.
And in recognition of this, we just have a certificate that we want to present to Ramona from the town and the select board, thanking her for her service to the town and awarding her Person of the Year. So thank you.
I hear that some town meetings get very contentious. Putney Town meeting is just one celebration after another. It's so nice. What a town. Article 13, to elect trustees to the Putney Public Library. Usually we have someone from the board who presents a slate. Do we have a motion? Go ahead and take the microphone, hold it right up to your chin. Identify yourself.
I move that...
Identify yourself first, please.
Well, Mary Lou Treat. I move that Paul Lavasser, Randy Smith, Chris Osgood, Gay Foster, Louise Papowitz, and Mary Alice Herbert, and myself, Mary Lou Treat, be elected for another 2-year term as a trustee of the Putney Public Library.
Thank you very much. So that's your slate. Is there a second to that motion?
Laura Campbell.
Laura Campbell seconds. Is there any discussion of the motion? Would anybody like to add names to the slate or speak against the candidate? No. Okay. Are you ready for the question? Article 13. To elect the slate as presented. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and we've passed that article unanimously. Article 14. Your sewer fund appears in your town report, page 16. 16, Anita tells me. Will somebody please move the order?
To see if the town, this Article 14, to see if the town will vote to approve the 2011-2012 sewer fund budget as outlined in the 2010 town report.
Second, please. Second? So, the sewer fund budget is before you. What's your pleasure? Is this, I didn't have time to look it over, and I'm just doing some last-minute studying, or is this, we really have nothing to say? Any discussion of the sewer fund budget? All right. Are you ready for the question? Sewer fund budget is on page 16, and we need to vote a sum certain. So the sewer fund budget as presented on page 16 is for $208,600. Are you ready for the question? We have a question.
I
I'm Pamela Covich. I'm not actually ready for the question. I have a question about it. I'm just looking at the budget. Could somebody explain what the $13,000 jump is in the miscellaneous line for from fiscal 11 to 12?
That's about a third of the way down the page, quarter of the way down the page. Is that right? The board is querying.
Excuse me, could you repeat that question, please?
You're asked about the jump in the miscellaneous line item.
The revenue line?
Yes. Yeah, in revenue.
Are you talking about the surplus fund line? Okay. I could answer that. That money is surplus fund money that the sewer fund has accumulated over time, and it's being inserted into the budget to pay for an energy improving upgrade to the sewer plant, which involves putting some sensors in the sewer ditch to monitor oxygen levels, and then adjust the motors accordingly. So,
It's Pamela Covich again, Chris. So that is reflected then in the plant improvements line?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
We're getting very sophisticated cybernetic systems in Putney where we take feedback from the environment and adjust the system accordingly. Very impressive. Are you ready for the question? All in favor of the sewer fund budget as presented, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it, and you passed the sewer fund budget unanimously. Article 15, to see if the town will vote to authorize the Select Board to borrow an amount not to exceed $60,000 as Putney's portion of matching funds for Vermont Transit Enhancement Grant awarded in 2010 to reconstruct Main Street sidewalks for a period of not more than 5 years. Do you want to move the article as presented, or do you have a different motion? As read. Okay. Seconded, just to get it on the floor? Sorry? Okay, Eva seconds. Now it's before you is your chance to ask clarifying questions or objections.
Alan Blood, is the 5 years the period the money can be borrowed for?
Yes.
Kate Dodge, could you give us a little description about what kinds of improvements are going to be made?
The gist of this improvement is that it will be a replacement of the sidewalk that is on the west side of Main Street, i.e. from the town hall to the co-op would be a fully ADA compliant, Americans with Disabilities Act compliant sidewalk, approximately 5 feet in width throughout, new granite curbing, an improvement of the corner at where Old Route 5 comes into Route 5 to narrow that down a little bit, and the inclusion of curbing, etc., around driveways and other accesses. There's only one other road that comes in, which is, I believe, called West Street, that goes up right by the post office, right? And we received the grant money in the amount of $300,000 last year, and we have been in the process. We had a sidewalk committee that worked through, chose an engineer to work on this project and worked through it over the last couple of years to design it, and it's now just about at the 85% complete number where we can take it out to bid in order to hopefully do the work on the sidewalk this coming summer. That's That's essentially, and that grant requires a 20% match from the town. The amount of $60,000 is the amount that we potentially would spend in cash outlay, but we hope to offset that with some in-kind work from the town crews, et cetera, management of some of the activities, et cetera, that would decrease that $60,000. So that would be hopefully a maximum that we would need to borrow in order to achieve it.
That's what the work for which you are voting if you support this motion. Other questions? Objections? Support?
Craig Stead from Main Street, Putney.
Please identify yourself.
I said Craig Stead.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
I am on the old sidewalk, and I would highly recommend a new sidewalk, because most people walk in the road because of the sidewalk we've got right now. And so kudos to the people who got the grant and got the funding, and let's do this one.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
My name is Louise Matwood, and I was wondering...
Please hold the mic right.
Better?
Better.
I was wondering if it was possible to extend the sidewalk up to West Hill. Also, while you're improving, so start from one end of the town to West Hill.
The question would be to extend from the Putney Central School up to West Hill, is that correct? Yes. But from the Central School to, yes. To my knowledge, that hasn't previously been proposed. It's something that we would certainly entertain as a possibility, and maybe somebody can present to the select board or to the town that as an idea that we should explore.
Those of you who will remember the Mabel Gray Memorial Sidewalk installation from the town center to the Central School will know that that took about 15 or 20 years of town meeting discussion, but that's no time like the present to start the process.
It's my understanding that this, Eva Munden, it's my understanding that this is associated with what we talked about last year in terms of getting the grant. There were some meetings around that. Isn't that true? Yeah.
Sorry, to clarify, the West Hill?
No, for what we decided on.
Yes.
Yes, so that was decided before, for your information, and also at that point it was considered to make a circle and come back around on Old Route 5 in the future. And I believe that that was proposed before extending it up to West Hill. That's my understanding, because so many people walk that area. So my understanding was that the first proposal of extension, and then the third proposal, as Bert proposed, would be to go to Landmark College.
Yes.
So I think that
there have been discussions of phase lengthening up from the center, i.e. the intersection of Main Street and Kimball Hill. One thing that the Historical Society has done in planning the general store is allowed for a sidewalk there to pass by the general store. We would ideally extend up past Basketville and to Landmark. At this point in time, it's not fiscally realistic for us to look at doing that, but it has been through some preliminary engineering review, and there also, you're correct, a loop around on Carroll Brown Way to Old Route 5 and returning to New Route 5 has also been explored. Both of those at this point are being put on hold. I think that we felt that the sidewalk from Main Street to the co-op is the one that's most important to do at this point, but those others are on the table for some time in the future.
Am I correct in understanding that there can be no crosswalk on state roads unless there's a sidewalk on the other side? Is that correct?
It's very difficult to get crosswalks anywhere where there isn't an intersection, basically a four-way intersection.
That's what I
So
thought.
we won't technically, I believe, on this, have a crosswalk anywhere other than where they already exist.
Okay, thank you.
Are you ready for the question? Sounds like a town sidewalk committee might be rumbling around. Will you vote Article 15 to authorize the Select Board to borrow an amount of not to exceed $60,000 as Putney's portion of the matching funds for a V-Trans enhancement grant awarded in 2010 to reconstruct Main Street sidewalks for a period of not more than 5 years? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You've passed Article 15. Article 16. To see if the town will vote to authorize the Select Board to borrow an amount, not to exceed $75,000 for the purchase of a replacement for a Kawasaki front-end loader to be repaid over a period of not more than 5 years. Will somebody please move the article? Somebody move the
I
article?
will move that as read.
Okay. Second? Holler out your name. Okay, Kathleen Lawrence seconds. The article is before you. What's your pleasure about buying a replacement for the Kawasaki front-end loader? Any discussion? Any feelings about it?
Arthur Westing. I'm certainly in favor of a replacement as soon as it's needed, and I assume it's needed. But I'm surprised to see that it's been pre-decided on what brand to buy. Why isn't it a matter of hunting around for the best quality and best price and so on?
We're replacing the Kawasaki. The Kawasaki is the one we're replacing.
You're not...
We're not buying necessarily another.
I guess that was my misreading.
Any other discussion? Aha. Get something going on the loader here.
Mark Bauer, I'm just wondering, every year we have one thing or another that comes up that needs to be replaced, and I guess we don't expect that. I'm wondering why we go into that assuming we need to borrow. Sometimes we have surpluses or other situations that we have some like $75,000 that might be available to make the purchase outright.
So the board is worried about saving money versus borrowing money?
I could try to take a stab at the thinking behind that. Our capital reserve fund has been very low for a number of years. We do have a surplus this year. If there is a budget summary that explains the surplus, and what we are hoping you will accept as our proposal, because it would require almost the entire surplus to buy that out of cash. And since the budget that's being proposed is basically a budget that will not increase the tax rate, we felt it was more prudent to set aside some of that surplus for future capital expenses in years where we might not have a surplus. So right now we only have $33,000 in the capital reserve fund. So if things go as we hope they will, we'll have quite a bit more at the end of the meeting, so that next year, if there is no surplus, we'll have something to use for making down payments on equipment.
Your moderator would refer you to page 22 if you are interested in the schedule of these replacements, and you'll see right in the middle, in the top section there, the loader, Kawasaki, which we are replacing. Are you ready for the question?
The other thing I would just quickly add to that is the fact that the borrowing atmosphere these days is pretty favorable to low interest rates, and it's sort of hard to beat that. We haven't arranged financing for this per se, but municipalities are able to borrow at pretty impressive rates, so it's probably worth doing.
Well, do you want to buy a loader? Okay. Will the town vote to authorize the select board to borrow an amount not to exceed $75,000 for the purchase of a replacement for the Kawasaki front-end loader to be repaid over a period of not more than 5 years? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. We passed Article 16. Article 17, to see if the town will vote to authorize the select board to borrow an amount not to exceed $75,000 for the expenses associated with the development of a gravel operation in partnership with the town of Dummerston to be repaid over a period of not more than 5 years. Will somebody please move the article?
I'll move Article 17 as read by the moderator.
Is there a second? Okay. The article is before you to develop the gravel pit.
Hi, Benji Reagan. Just curious, what equipment are you going to use in that gravel pit to load up? Is that going to be Dummerston's equipment, or are you guys going to go in on a loader to fill the trucks up with sand and things like that? What's the relationship? This gravel pit is in Dummerston, right? It's a joint venture. Just curious how the equipment part happens there. Are we going to leave a loader there, or Dummerston will have one there, or stay sanding?
Typically, what we do in our current pit, and I would assume this would be the same in our future pit, is that the vast majority of material moving occurs in a relatively short period of time. We usually contract the crushing, and that takes place over approximately 6 weeks, 3 weeks. And at that point, we tend to juggle equipment, depending on who's got equipment available and access, etc. It keeps our costs to a minimum to split the use of equipment with Dummerston. We do share, we have shared in the past a screening machine, which we still have, but is coming closer to the end of its life, and we don't know whether we will replace that or not. But basically, when we have a loader available and we need to move stuff, we'll have our loader there. When Dummerston has a loader available and when they need to move stuff, they'll have a loader there. It depends on who it works out for. Essentially, that's up to the town crews to just make the decisions as to which equipment is where and when they need it. So.
Besides which, the gravel operation probably can get a really good deal on a Kawasaki loader that's going to be available pretty soon. Any other questions about the gravel pit? Nope. I get trumped by the carriers.
Sorry, Pamela Cummins. Could you guys just tell us a little bit about where the gravel pit is and the story of the gravel pit? Somebody?
Sure. Once upon a time. The current pit that we share with Dummerston is off of Carpenter Road. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's close down by the river. That whole embankment along the river, there's a lot of gravel deposits and whatnot. This area that is looking to be developed is behind the campground that's there. When we made our agreement with Dummerston 6 years ago now, we were looking at, we knew it was going to be a good provider of sand and a marginal provider for gravel, that there would be perhaps 5 years worth of gravel supply for Putney and Dummerston. It's exceeded that to some degree, but it is running thin, and we are fortunate in being able to develop this pit virtually next door. The similar open vein there seems to be a great deal of gravel, up to 30 some odd years perhaps of gravel in that area. As so many towns in Vermont right now are going through excessive expenditure trucking gravel from far greater distances, we're going to be very fortunate to develop this, and we should not miss out. And this request is for costs associated with the Act 250 process, permitting process, our share of it. with Dummerston.
And this particular pit is at the location of the previous Hidden Acres, which is the campground that's right just south of the V-Trans area. It's actually owned by the Renaud Brothers Construction Company at this time, and they have access also through the ABF trucking site there. Development costs should be relatively low compared to what we experienced the last time around, and so it just looks very promising for large quantities. Mike Renaud, who's sort of spearheading it from their side, is a very reasonable guy and very easy to work with and friendly towards the municipalities. So seems like a good idea.
Greeno Novokoski. Once again, we talk about non-renewable resources. You see those street cleaning machines out in the spring. How much material that we put on the road is reclaimed and reused?
Yep. Well, I will tell you that sand basically is not of any use after it's used once. It doesn't maintain enough grit to reuse it. So sand is basically exhausted once you put it down. The gravel, when it gets tossed to the side of the road, is always graded back into the road. So before we add gravel to a road, we use whatever's been pushed aside to the best of the town's ability to reclaim it out of the ditches. So I don't think this.
Do the street cleaning machines get anything?
No, the street cleaning machines that you see are actually on Route 5, and that's not our jurisdiction, that's state. I don't know what they do with it, whether they reclaim it by any methods or.
I would say that normally know that it's because it's contaminated with salt and it doesn't really have much grit left in it. It's more of a problem of disposing it in someplace safe.
Other questions about the gravel pit? Our gift from the glaciers. Way in back. Billy, way in back.
Whereabouts is it located, that new pit over in Dummerston?
The new one is at the Hidden Acres campsite. It's behind the Hidden Acres campsite.
I just wondered if it was to go over the other side of the mountain there. It'd be kind of rough coming through a couple of bridges over the trunk.
Yeah, it's actually very close to where our current pit is, and it's easy access right off of Route 5. So in that sense, it's as ideal as we're likely to find.
Okay, I used to work down there, so it was rough going through that bridge with the traffic and on Route 30 and everything. I sat there for a solid half hour one night when it was storming, waiting for traffic to slow down. And a car from out of state come, I see him pull over the center line, put his four-way flashes on. What the heck's the matter with him? He got right out of his car, motioned to me to go out by. The whole line of traffic behind him.
Well, at least he let you by. That was very nice.
When I got upside him, I thanked him. I said, well, let me go.
Are you ready for the question? No, not quite. We have one in the back.
I want to make a comment. For all the years that Mr. Aikman has served Putney, that we could have a round of applause for all the work that he's done this year.
Thank you, Bill. It's been a good year for snow. More questions?
I just wanted to make one comment about the financing of this, and actually, although the $75,000 Dummerston and Putney are sharing that, the actual cost is being split three ways with the actual landowner. So, in fact, the cost to Putney and Dummerston is $50,000 apiece, and we're going to get either in free material all of that money back over the first year or two of the pit's operation. So, and then from then on, the reduced lease price per yard. So it's a great deal as far as just the actual material.
So, do we want to borrow another $75,000? Are you ready for the question? I mean, it's chump change, right? And these days, borrowing money, it's true. Okay. See if the town will vote to authorize the select board to borrow an amount not to exceed $75,000 for the expenses associated with the development of gravel operation in partnership with the town of Dummerston to be repaid over a period of not more than 5 years. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you passed that unanimously. Big article. Article 18. Will the town vote to raise and appropriate an amount of money necessary to defray its expenses and liabilities for the ensuing fiscal year? And if so, how much? Will somebody please move the article?
I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate an amount of money necessary to defray its expenses and liabilities for the ensuing fiscal year, July 1, 2011 to June 30th, 2012. And I believe that amount is $1,727,623.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Somebody, you want to second that? Okay, Alan. That's Alan. So, I'll ask the town manager of the select board to refer us to the town meeting and walk us through the budget just for a minute or two.
Well, I just wanted to say that there is a budget summary available, a one-page sheet, if anyone doesn't have it, which kind of goes over the highlights of it, I guess you could say, or whatever, lowlights, but discusses most of the major points in this budget. So if anyone doesn't have them, they're up on the front here. This is what happens when you don't do your homework. That's where I have marked. Very clever. In your town report, you're on pages 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21. We'll open discussion. Maggie?
Maggie Cassidy. I believe it's that discussion mentions that the library will be extending its Saturday hours, but I'm looking at the in the town report, I didn't see exactly by how much. Could you let us know what that might be?
The board is querying. Yeah. Steve, you want to field that one?
So we would like to open the library on Saturdays in the winter. That would be from November through March, 2 extra hours. So instead of closing at 1 o'clock in the winter, we would close at 3 o'clock.
Thank you. We have an extension of the question. It's a workout.
Actually, it's not a question, it's also a comment. I would like to commend the select board. As I did this morning for the school, I think that our library is really a wonderful resource in the town. And the new policy of of not imposing fines on overdue materials, extending the library's hours, the programming that's been happening at the library. I think over the last several years, the library has really gained a very important place in the town, and thank you for supporting it.
In the report, it notes that Putney has become a fine, free library. Put the comma where you like.
Alan Blood, I want to thank Chris for putting together this budget summary. I find it very useful. I think it helps us understand some of the figures that are a little harder to understand. I want to encourage you to keep doing that in the future.
Thank you. Any discussion of the substance of the budget? Yes?
Kate Dodge, this is kind of a minor question, but I'm curious. On line 3210-62, on page 60, excuse me. It indicates that the $6,000 was budgeted for legal fees and $6,000 was spent for legal fees. I think that's unusual to spend the exact amount on legal fees.
It's a $500 a month retainer is what it is, so that's how that works out. And we use that pretty regularly and try not to go over that amount. And our town attorney is Richard Coutant, and he is helpful in keeping our expenses to a minimum. So,
thank you.
Abe Noe Hayes. I'm looking at page 21 on line, where did it go here? 9999-01. It's the debt service principal. It's one of the biggest line item increases, and I just wondered what caused that to increase by $23,000.
That was the first year's payment on a truck that we bought last year. So that's why that's increased.
Other questions about the budget? In the back.
Hi, Steve Ingram. This is not so much a question as it is maybe trying to gauge the sense of fellow citizens here. Around town, particularly this past year, there's been tremendous infrastructure improvement, and it continues, and it's encouraging to see. We also know from talking to members of the select board that you've seen some, pressure's the wrong word, but you've seen some encouragement from different organizations coming forward and asking for continued support from the select board. And knowing that as the need grows and the number of organizations asking for help grows, that you are maintaining a pretty tight hand on the budget, doing your best job possible. But just wondering if the sense of the town, is it time for us to start thinking about stepping up and encouraging the select board to perhaps support our social services to a greater degree? Not saying that it's lacking now, but to maybe even increase it. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments about the budget? The social service budget is on page 21 for those who are interested. Other comments?
I'll just make a comment in response to what Steve said. That's partly related to the fact that we were approached by the Putney Food Shelf this year to ask for money for their services to the town. We decided that probably the most straightforward way, it was a possibility that they would have petitioned us to have been included in the social service budget. We all felt that it was important enough to support the food shelf that we decided to go ahead and include it in the social service budget. What that ended up doing was reducing the contributions to all the other social services by a small portion in order to achieve a relatively even allocation to the services that we receive and that request money from us. So that's that's sort of in reference to that. It did bring the contribution to everybody else down at least a little bit. There's a formula for how we arrive at the social service contribution, and I think Steve's question really is whether we should be looking at that formula and whether times have changed enough so that we need to do that formula a little differently. So this is, I don't think, something that we probably want to sort of discuss in depth now on the floor, but that we will be looking at over the next year to see how it's done.
Kate Dodge, when you talk about the formula, that has to do with which type of organization gets how much, but the overall amount, is that a formula amount too? In other words, the $35,000?
Yes, it is. Actually, there is a policy pretty long-standing before I've been here, so 6 or 7 years at least, of an amount of 2.5% of the operating budget dedicated to social services. So that's an actual policy that the board has followed every year. We calculate that number and then we divide it up. And there's also some suggestions in that formula about how much goes to each level.
So does that mean that
Could be changed, though.
we as a town meeting could, if we wanted to, change that amount as a line item?
You can change anything you want, yes. This is the select board budget. You can change any line item you want. But in order to do so, you have to make a motion. Other conversation, questions, comments about the $1 million, almost $2 million select board budget that's before you? Behind you, Kate?
Alice Mays, on line 21, page 21 rather, the total expenditures, and then it says 6%. Do I read that correctly as meaning that there will be a 6% increase in the town budget?
Well, you mean in the town tax rate?
Well,
the town budget? Because the budget increase is 6%. The amount that we're going to raise through taxation is not changing. If you look on page 19 of it, sorry, on page 17, the very first line, current property taxes, will give you an idea of approximately where the tax rate will fall.
Since I'm not a fast reader, does that mean that our tax rate will be approximately, or
the same as this year's?
As this year's. Well, I appreciate that because I think numbers of us are interested in providing affordable housing, and when our taxes go up, it means that we're not able to provide as affordable housing. Thank you.
Other questions, comments regarding the town?
Kate Dodge. I'd like to move that we increase the social service agency contributions by 5% for this year only. And I'd like to speak to that.
It would have to be just for this year. Increase.
Right.
Can you name a dollar amount, please?
Well, let's see. 5%, 3,500 divided by 2, 1,750. Right?
So you're amending the article.
Yes.
To add $1,750 to the social services line item, which is on page 20.
Yes.
I believe on the bottom of page
21.
20. No, that's the contribution.
Oh, okay.
On the bottom of page 20, way on the bottom. It's line 8720-44.
And if I could add a tail onto that, if we could, to have it used to increase each agency by a proportional amount.
And to increase proportional to the current allocation.
That's right.
So you have a motion to increase the town budget by $1,750 for the social services budget to be distributed according to the current allocation ratio. Is there a second? Seconds. Okay. Discussion of would you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah. I realize this is a token amount, but, and in full disclosure, I am on the board of the Council on Aging for Southeastern Vermont. All of these agencies are hurting badly, and I think it's really important to show them our support, even if it's a token support, and it can help them to raise funds elsewhere, I believe, in order, as a result of our showing of a support for them.
Other comments about the amendment? There's an amendment before you to alter the select board's budget.
Arthur Westing. This is just a question. I recall from previous years that when the school budget is diddled with, or added to, I should say, the town can do this, the voters can do this, but cannot tell the school board how to use it. And I wonder if that also applies in this case.
In the town budget, we can specify the line item that we want changed.
Thank you.
In the school district budget, we cannot. A little quirk of Vermont law. Other discussion of the amendment to increase the budget by $1,750.
Seems a little petty, but $1,750 is hardly anything in this budget. I'd like to see if you'd accept a friendly amendment to your amendment to raise, instead of raising $1,750, to raise it to $4,000 that we're adding for the food shelf, which I think would, in my understanding, would leave the other agencies about where they were last year.
So Robert's Rules is always a little tricky about this, but if it's a friendly amendment and the maker of the amendment and the seconder accept it, we can incorporate it without voting on it as a separate amendment.
I accept it.
Okay. Okay. So the amount before you now is $4,000. I feel a little like an auctioneer here. Do I hear five? So the amount before you is $4,000 to increase the select board's budget with that amount specifically towards the social services budget, and that being to offset the increase of the food shelf. Other questions or comments?
Mark Bobro, we hardly sneezed at $75,000 for a loader or $75,000 for a gravel pit. I'm wondering if we might want to revisit the 2.5% that Chris notified us as sort of the practice for social services, and maybe lift that in some way. I'm not sure the process for that.
Other questions? I think the select board, as they review this over the year, will take into account some of the sentiment that they're hearing now. I hope.
Jackie Walker. The agencies that are getting $400 are just as important as the ones that are getting the $1,000, $4,000, and $3,000. And I would like to see this increase go to the agencies that are down on the bottom of that list, that are the $400 list. And because I think they really, really need a lot of help.
So the way the amendment was proposed, it would be proportional to the current, so they would be getting help. Are you wanting to change the amendment? Okay, so you're offering an amendment to the amendment. And the amendment to the amendment is to distribute an additional $4,000 only to the bottom tier, as it were. Is that correct? Is there a second to Jackie Walker's amendment? Steve Anderson seconds. So our conversation now is limited to this amendment, which is strictly, do we want to limit any increase we might make only to the agencies which get only $400? That's all we're discussing right now, is that limitation. Can you bring the mic up front? Thank you. All the way up front here to the... Okay.
Arthur Westing. Earlier, Chris Ryan mentioned that there's some sort of, or Josh, I can't remember, mentioned there's some sort of a guidelines. First of all, the 2.5% guideline, and then the distribution guidelines. And so before we consider changing those, could we hear what your guidelines are? In other words, why did you pick what's there at the moment, so we can judge the validity or value of how you've done it already?
Anybody want to speak to the... there's a historical reason, but I'm not sure anybody on the stage remembers it.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can remember it. I know that it's based on, roughly, as you can see, it's based on how local the service is and how directly they serve our community. The percentage breakdown, I'm not sure of. Chris has shuffling his folders and not sure he's going to be able to answer that either. But okay, he has the formula.
I can give you the answer. There are three groups. Group A is Putney-based agencies. Group B are agencies based outside Putney providing significant level of services to Putney residents, and all other agencies are in Group C. And the recommended apportionment of those is 45 in Group A, 42 in Group B, and 13 in Group C. And that's roughly what was adopted as townwide policy a few years ago. And it's been amended up and down slightly over the years, but always trying to keep within those general guidelines.
So we're now discussing just the question of the distribution of a change. That's all we're discussing now. Any other questions on the amendment to the amendment? Craig?
Craig Stead, I agree with the guidelines, and it's called Keep It Local. And I'm against varying the formula, which has been in existence for a period of time, and it seems a well-reasoned formula. Therefore, I'm against the amendment.
Other comments on the amendment to the amendment? We're going to try and move this along.
I think that the guidelines have been thought about and maintained for a number of years, and that we should not alter that at this point. If there is, for next year, some reasoning and perhaps some motion, I don't know what we need to do to get that, that there's a reason to change that, if perhaps the organizations that are getting the lowest tier are ones that actually are sued in our area, and we're just not familiar with that, and we don't know how much they're serving our area, then I think we ought to consider changing the apportionment. But I don't, in my opinion, that we shouldn't do that right now.
Okay, I'm going to try and move this along, but go ahead. Just on the amendment to the amendment.
I'm going to break the law. Even when there's nothing at all to prevent anyone in this room from donating to any of these organizations. And I think the naive piece sometimes is that we forget that we have the opportunity to open our own wallets and give, and that we think the town should be giving. And sometimes that puts pressure on some of the people who don't live in a certain kind of economic realm than others. And so I totally support these organizations, and I remember the 40-some years I've lived in this town where none of these organizations were on there. And it's so important that we take individual responsibility to volunteer for and give out of our own pockets, and rather than having organizations or towns do it for us.
Okay, please keep your comments to the question of the distribution of any increase, so we can move this along. Jeanette.
Thanks, Jeanette White. I was actually, I think, on the select board just at the end of my time on the select board when we looked at the formula, and it was quite deliberately looked at in terms of how the organizations serve Putney residents, and if it should be looked at again, it needs to be looked at in a really thoughtful manner, and I think the select board can do that instead of just doing it on the fly. Thanks.
Are you ready for the question? You have an amendment before you, which is to limit any increase only to the bottom, to the agencies that on page 21 are AIDS Project of Southern Vermont down. Do you want to limit any increase to those agencies? All in favor of the amendment to the amendment, please say aye. Opposed, nay? Nay. The nays appear to have it. The nays have it. The amendment is defeated. We're now back to the primary amendment, which is to increase the amount to the social services budget by $4,000 to be distributed according to the existing formula.
Pamela Covich. I just, to Kate and to Alan, I would like to make an amendment to your amendments. In that the original amount allocated to Putney organizations before the budget was reworked to include the food shelf is $42.50. So if the food shelf only gets 4,000, they won't be getting what the other Putney organizations get. So if it's a friendly agreement of everyone involved, I'd like to up the amount that the social services gets to be $42.50 so that the food shelf gets the same allotment that the other Putney organizations would have received, were the food shelf not included.
Okay. I'm not sure how the math is going to work out, but you want to raise the $4,000 to $4,250. Is that considered a friendly amount? Kate?
I'm asking whether she means clarifying.
Okay.
I'd like to thank this young man for getting exercise for us. So if I understand correctly, and maybe the man with the numbers on the stage will amend this, before the food shelf was incorporated into the numbers, the previous allotment for social services was $35,000, as it is in the town report now, correct? And with the distribution, I'm on the inside because I work for Putney Cares, so I know what Putney Cares got, and that's why I'm working this number. If the food shelf gets the same allotment as the others, if we put it back in, if we put $4,000 in, all the other Putney organizations would get $42.50, and the food shelf would get $4,000. If we just put in $4,000.
No, because the motion was to have that $4,000 allotted to all of the organizations proportionally. So technically, if it's not $4,250, it might in fact decrease everybody's just a very small amount from last year, but it would be proportional across the board.
Okay.
So they would all receive, each category would receive the same amount, it would just be higher.
So like it would be a little bit less than what we received last year. Okay, so never mind.
Are you
Sorry.
withdrawing your amendment?
I'm withdrawing my amendment. Thank you. Sorry.
Are you ready for the question? So the question before you is whether to amend the select board budget to increase it by an amount of $4,000, said $4,000 to be expended on the social services agency contributions proportional to their current allocation. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You've passed the amendment. We're now back to the amended select board budget, which is now before you in the amount of 7 plus 4. So that would be 1,731,623. Is that right? I left my calculator home, but my math teacher would be proud of me. So, you now have $1,731,623 before you that you are voting. Is there further discussion of the select board budget? Questions? Comments? Ready for the question? All in favor of raising and appropriating a sum of $1,731,623 for the town to defray its expenses for the ensuing year, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and you've passed your amended select board budget. Not too bad. Okay. That's Article 18. Article 19. Will you authorize the Putney Select Board to borrow money in anticipation of revenues in the form of taxes and grants
to pay current expenses. Will somebody please move the article?
So moved as stated.
The article is moved. Is it seconded? All the same seconded. Okay, we don't know that. Very good. Is there discussion of whether or not we should borrow money? All in favor of authorizing the Select Board to borrow money in anticipation of revenues, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it, and you've passed Article 19. Article 20 is an Australian ballot vote to see if the town will vote to decide. I'm sorry, it's not an Australian ballot vote. We will be discussing this here. To see if the town will vote to decide by Australian ballot whether to reinstate the position of collector of delinquent taxes as an elected position with a 3-year term commencing in 2012. Such vote to be held at the next special or annual town meeting. Do I have a mover? The article is moved and seconded. Okay, Chris. So the article is before you. I want to explain very briefly. This article is a discussion of whether or not to put something up for vote at Australian ballot in a future meeting. We will be discussing whether or not to do that. We will not be discussing the substance of the article in this meeting because that's not what's before you. It may bleed over a little bit, but I wanted to be clear what we're voting about. So,
Arthur Westing, I move to move Article 20, and the reason I did that was because I'm hoping we'll vote it down. We discussed this issue at great length at the last town meeting, and I'm not permitted to discuss the pros and cons of the issue, but I certainly think that whatever we do, we should not do by Australian ballot next year, because that will prevent us from having an open discussion which will bring out the pros and cons of doing this. So I think we should not do it by Australian ballot, but by town meeting ballot, so that we can discuss the issues.
Craig Stead, I'm a little confused on this. We had, as Art has indicated, a long discussion regarding this particular issue last town meeting. Why is it being brought up as an Australian ballot? Could you please inform me on that? I mean, is it required by law?
I believe it is, but we'll either do. How?
Maybe Jill could speak to this at this point.
In the back to the right.
Hi, Jill Garland. There are approximately 650 registered voters in the town of Putney. Of that number, a very small percentage attend town meeting and discuss the issues on the articles. 2 years ago, 10%, less than 10% of the voters voted on what this article refers to. There are many more voters in the town that would like to weigh in on this issue, and I'm urging you to vote yes on this issue so that everybody can weigh in. Thank you.
Excuse me. Rear and center.
Thank you, Jean Giddings. While it would be important, I think, for as many people in the town to vote on these issues as possible, this would be scheduled to come up for Australian ballot at a special town meeting, which there might be one of, which is historically even less well attended and fewer voters are taking part than even this meeting. So that it seems to me that this will not meet that, that desire. And I do think we did have really a long discussion of it at either the last meeting or the meeting before. I think it was actually 2 years before, and I think I would like to see it put to bed.
Other discussion of the motion whether to put up for Australian ballot the reinstatement of the position of collector of delinquent tax.
Steve Anderson, this is a question really, I thought we had resolved this last year, and the resolution was to go into effect as of this year. So we really haven't had a chance to explore the new setup, and I'm wondering why this was placed on the agenda, or who placed it on, why it was placed on. It seems to me it's very premature to be discussing changing something we've only just put into practice.
There was a 3-year term, but would anybody like to speak to the timing of it or not?
Well, just to be clear, that was voted 2 years ago, and it was the transition was to happen at the end of the current term, which would be next year's election. And this, I mean, this is a public policy question that was decided by a town meeting vote. Public policy questions can be decided by Australian ballot. It just requires this step, which was the intent of the person that petitioned it, the current collector, to have it reconsidered by Australian ballot. It was perfectly legal, just to be clear.
Eva Munden, I support what Steve said, is that at the end of this year, we would give an opportunity for the change which we talked about to take place, and that we would try that change, and if that change didn't work, then we could go back to what was there before. So I would like to speak against this.
Okay. Other discussion of Article 20, which is to put something before the next special or regular town meeting by Australian ballot.
Now that I understand a little bit more of what might be behind this, I am strongly against it. And I would urge the other taxpayers in this room to follow what I think is going on, which is the don't vote for it.
Other conversation, questions, comments, amendments, motions?
I think Phil's done a good job, and with all the gas she takes from different ones where she goes, and the cost of fuel and everything, I think she should deserve another term at it. As far as people hauling about taxes, if they pay them when they're supposed to, there wouldn't be no collection.
So, again, we're voting in a few moments whether or not to revisit this question in our Australian ballot vote at the next special or regular town meeting. Can we have a mic?
Anita Coombs. I'd like to answer Jean that when you have something on Australian ballot, there are more people that usually get the ballot and vote. The laws have changed so that more people can vote absentee. They don't have to come to the polls. They can request a ballot, it's mailed to them, or they can come in the office and vote during regular hours.
Other questions? Discussion of this article? Are you ready for the question? Article 20, to see if the town will vote to decide by Australian ballot whether to reinstate the position of collector of delinquent taxes as an elected position with a 3-year term, commencing in 2012. Such vote to be held at the next special or annual town meeting. All in favor of the article, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say nay. Nay. The nays appear to have it. We can have a hand vote. That's why I paused. So we've been asked for a division, what's called the division of the House. All in favor of the article, as I just read it, please stand. And let's see. Scott, you want to come through? Oh, we may not need to, okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We have 12 in favor of the article. Did someone count it? Stand again. I'm sorry. Oh, I didn't count the 2 back. Yes. Stay standing. Yes. Okay. 17. All opposed, please stand. So now we can count. Yes. (24 and 21). So we have 9, 3, 2, 59 voting opposed. So the nays have it, the article is defeated. Article 21. We're not going to be going till 4:30. Article 21. To transact any other business that may legally come before the town meeting. This article can take any business directed anywhere. The only requirement is that it cannot bind the town to any action.
I have been...
Name, please.
Greeno Novokoski. Thank you. I have been enormously animated and inspired by goings-on on our planet. I have drafted a statement that perhaps you will agree with. As lovers of freedom and advocates of self-determination, we, the residents of Putney and citizens of the world, publicly celebrate and praise the peoples of Tunisia, of Egypt, of Yemen, of Libya, and other places. My language isn't developed here yet. And others, you can help me there. For their courage, sacrifice, and commitment, may we be inspired to animate our citizenry and fully participate in our democracy. As individuals, may we lend our support to these people.
Can you bring a copy of that up for Anita, please? So, are you making a motion?
Yes.
And what is your motion?
My motion is that the Putney people decide to make that statement.
Okay. So you have a motion to make a public statement on behalf of support of freedom fighters everywhere. Is there a second? Many seconds. Any discussion of the article? I'm sorry, I don't usually talk this much. I usually sit and listen to people. So I'm a pony, a little horse.
Keith Fletcher, can we just add Madison, Wisconsin to the list?
Yes. Is that a friendly amendment? Are you accepting that as a friendly amendment? Do the secretaries accept that as a friendly amendment? Yes, okay.
So I don't know quite, where do you want this to go?
In the places part. Other discussion of the amendment. I'm sorry, of the article. You have a motion before you to publish such a letter. Any discussion? Any opposition? I have to do this. I'm your moderator. Are you ready for the question? Okay. All in favor of the motion at... Sorry? It's just other business. Would the mover like to suggest what would happen to this particular motion if it's passed?
I welcome ideas for its extensive dissemination.
Farmer. Okay.
How about who runs a blog around here? Get it on the internet.
Okay, so it is requested that it be published anywhere it can be.
Would the moderator read it out loud again, please?
There'll be a copy up here. Do you want? Okay. You go ahead and read those. Or actually, give it to me and I'm supposed to.
I did not mean to put myself up here. As lovers of freedom and advocates of self-determination, we, the residents of Putney and citizens of the world, publicly celebrate and praise the peoples of Tunisia, Egypt, Yemen, Libya, and Wisconsin, the USA, for their courage, sacrifice, and commitment. May we be inspired to animate our citizenry and fully participate in our democracy. As individuals, may we lend our support.
Are you ready for the question? No, you're not.
I'm Ellen Kay. I didn't think of this ahead of time, so I'll totally understand if this isn't doable here. I would like to see a separate statement. I was very moved listening to the proceedings today, thinking about how much we value our teachers, how we passed a school budget which has surplus in it, which has signs of cooperation between the board and the staff. There was something else I was going to say there, but it's gone. So I actually would like to see a separate statement.
Okay. Can you hold on to that? And after we pass this, can you?
Well, I would like to not just include Madison in that statement, but to talk about the austerity measures that are happening all over this country, and how in our little community we just raised the social service donations, even by a token amount. That's going in the opposite direction of what people are doing in the rest of the country, what's being proposed. I think that's very powerful. Okay. So I'm wondering if there could be a separate statement about, as a town, standing with what's happening.
Well, what I'm going to ask you to do is to draft that into a little paragraph, and while the discussion goes on, if you could submit it in actual form that we can then vote on, that would be great. There was further discussion of the article?
I totally agree with Ellen that I would like to have a separate statement because of the scale of what we are considering.
Okay. Separate, not included in this?
Not included Wisconsin.
Okay.
And possibly
So
a different statement for that state.
the motion before you is to pass Greeno's statement as she read it, and it remains so far unamended. Steve?
Steve Anderson, does the statement include the words Wisconsin at this point?
Yes.
Does it include Wisconsin? But I would strongly, I would like to amend it to reduce, to remove that word. I think it weakens it, I think it politicizes it, it's relevant domestic politics, and it shouldn't be in there.
So, is that an amendment? Steve? Is that an amendment?
I move to amend it to strike the word Wisconsin.
Okay. Is there a second to that amendment? We have several seconds to strike the reference to Wisconsin. Other discussion of the motion as presented? I'm sorry. I made a mistake. Discussion of the amendment. So now what we have to discuss is just whether or not to strike Wisconsin. That's all we're discussing right now.
Well, about to the comment that it politicizes it, I think the whole list is very political. This is Melanie Fletcher, sorry. I'm up here. Hi. Hi. Hello. Anyway, I just feel like the whole list is the fact of making the statement at all is a political statement to a certain extent, and I think the timing of the things in our own country coinciding with the things in the world are, that's a significant point, and I don't think that we need to separate them. I think they should go together.
So speaking against the amendment. Other conversation or discussion regarding the amendment to strike Wisconsin from the list? Are you ready for the question? Okay, I'll take that as a yes. So I'm going to ask for a vote as to whether we want to defeat or support the amendment to remove Wisconsin from the text of the resolution. Those in favor of removing Wisconsin, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay? Nay. The ayes appeared to me to have it. Anybody want to call for a division? Sure, okay. We'll do a quick stand-up. So please stand up if you support the amendment to remove Wisconsin from the resolution. You're right. You're right. So you're standing up if you do want to strike Wisconsin from the resolution.
How many did you get on the left?
9 on the left. 20. On the right? 7. 27 and 9 is 36. Okay, thank you. If you would like to defeat the amendment, that is, keep Wisconsin on the list, please stand. You want to keep Wisconsin on the list, please stand. With 2. Are our counters working? The amendment is supported. 16 to 36. So 36 voted to strike Wisconsin. So the letter stands without reference to Wisconsin. Is there any other discussion or amendment to the proposed motion? Do you want to do it as a separate or included? There was just some sentiment against including a lot of stuff. So you might want to do it as separate, but it's up to you.
We're wondering about just inserting a clear sentence saying "and also," and then having a sentence that clarifies that and keeps the two separate.
Okay, so you'll present that in a moment. Okay. Are you ready for the question? I will read to you. There is a motion to publish in all places the following statement. As lovers of freedom and advocates of self-determination, we, the residents of Putney and citizens of the world, publicly celebrate and praise the peoples of Tunisia, Egypt, Yemen, and Libya for their courage, sacrifice, and commitment. May we be inspired to animate our citizenry and fully participate in our democracy. As individuals, may we lend our support. All in favor of passing such a resolution, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say nay. You've passed that resolution unanimously. It's too late. But people will, I'm sure, be able to figure it out. There aren't many. It's too late. It's too late. So there you are. Do we have other business?
Abe Noe Hayes. I think it was 2 years ago that at town meeting I asked for support from the town for the Pierce's Hall rebuilding project, and the meeting gave that support, $500, and that helped us meet our goal and receive our matching grant. So I wanted to give a report back to you of what's happened with that money briefly. And what has happened is that we put a beautiful standing seam metal roof on Pierce's Hall, firmly fastened to a great new wooden reinforcing structure, wooden and steel, engineered and built, and that is all on there tight and good and should last 100 years if what people say about these roofs is true. And then also we even had some remaining money because we got such great deals on the work, and the work went along smoothly, to do some minor masonry repairs and buy some paint and do some painting inside. So it is so much sounder, it doesn't leak, it's dry, the structure is dry, it should last a long time. And it is beautiful again inside because we can paint over the giant water stains and let the wet spots dry up. So it's a rejuvenated building, and I'd like to invite everyone to an event in April, on April 30th, the last Saturday, which will be a potluck dinner, a Putney Transition Local 4 combination potluck dinner, also at the East Putney Community Club, and that will segue into a community contra dance afterwards. So that'll be in the supper time, leading all through the night, and you're all invited on the 30th of April. That'll be on iPutney, and it will also be publicized on the sandwich board in front of the town hall. So thank you for your support and making this hall still be here for events like that and for a long time in the future.
Thank you for your work on it. So we have a resolution working?
Before I leave, as the musician that leads the sit-in band that sits on the stage at Pierce's Hall, I would just like to publicly thank Abe for the fact that we don't have to sit amidst bat guano anymore.
Thank you. Wait a second. Are we ready for that resolution? Okay, you keep working.
You see today's Reformer, you see the second section of the Reformer. Peggy Leo sitting there smiling. Peggy was Person of the Year here once, and her daughter, Melissa Leo, recently received an Academy Award. So I have a certificate here, which I'm hoping you all will approve, so I can give it to Peggy to give to her daughter. So it goes like this. Honorary Citizen Award, Melissa Leo is hereby proclaimed to be an honorary citizen of Putney, Vermont. And it has a seal on it. It says Town Meeting Day, 3/1/2011. And I just need the Select Board's signature. So do you all approve of this certificate for Melissa Leo, please?
Now, hold on. Wait a second. Is that a motion?
It's a motion.
Is there a second? Many seconds. Is there any discussion of the motion? Honorary citizenship. This sounds like a little like the moose thing here. Now we've got to be careful. Do we want to open the floodgates? Are you ready for the question? Do you want to congratulate Melissa and make her an honorary Putney citizen? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say nay. Thank you very much, Eva.
And this is the second time we've made people honorary citizens. Once before we did it for a group of Cambodian farmers who were here, brought by Bob Nassau and Nancy Starr. So this makes the second
See, that's what happens. You open the floodgates. It's just Melissa Leo, and who knows who's going to be next. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Daniel Holtis, and I have a non-binding resolution I'd like to read. Hi, I'd like to read a non-binding resolution. Whereas the people of Putney, Vermont recognize the critical need for remedial action to restore and maintain a non-toxic natural environment beneficial to the well-being of all life on Earth, no financial, corporate, or political interests, no matter how powerful, shall legally override, hinder, obstruct, or restrain the people of Putney, Vermont from this action. Therefore, we the people of Putney, Vermont call on our elected officials to enact the following statewide initiatives. 1. To establish an official statewide incentive program for solar electric power similar to the Green Mountain Power's 6 cents per kilowatt rate. To fix the PACE program and begin funding renewable energy and weatherization projects through low-cost loans. 3, to enhance the bottle bill to include all bottles and cans, as well as all plastic containers, including juice and water bottles, and to establish mandatory recycling for businesses and schools for all bottles, cans, and paper products. 4, to support the elimination of unnecessary idling of heavy-duty motor vehicles by passing S81 and H154. And 5, to legalize hemp production and encourage the reintroduction of a statewide hemp industry for producing a variety of green products.
Can you bring that up front, please?
Yes, I can.
So this is a letter encouraging our legislators to take action. It binds us only philosophically. Is there a second to the motion? We have a second. Okay. Prepared. Is there any discussion of the motion?
I know Daniel, and I generally support what he does, but looking at this particular proposal here, mandatory recycling for businesses and schools for all bottles, cans, and paper products, businesses, how are you going to enforce that? That's one issue. And I think 5, to legalize hemp production implies to me to legalize growing pot in your backyard. And it may be interpreted that way by the people up in Montpelier. I don't know what they know about hemp. I don't know. This doesn't define what it is. So I just throw that out as a caution.
Are you speaking again? Just throwing it out as a caution. Okay. Other conversation, discussion, objections, support?
As a matter of fact, when you're talking about hemp, if we do have hemp production, it will probably bring down the THC level of the illegal marijuana plants that are around by cross-pollination. Also, we're talking about...
Please remember to identify yourself.
Oh, I'm Millie Payton. I'm sorry, the cold. So I think that if you need an amendment, so we could say that it's hemp are the cannabis plants, cannabis sativa plants with a 0.3% THC.
Are you offering this as an amendment, or is this just clarification?
Just clarification, because hemp can do amazing things, and it used to be very legal. In fact, it used to be mandated that we had to grow it. Washington himself said that George Washington said for us to make the most of the hemp plant. It actually looks like a bamboo plant, and it's very tall and long, whereas the marijuana plant is very short and squat. And we could do wonderful, wonderful things with it to help ourselves and help the earth if we had it back. And I think that our scientists are smart enough, and our government is smart enough to tell the difference. Over in Europe, they are. They have marijuana that's illegal, and hemp is legal. Same in Canada. I think it's time that we have trust that our government is smart enough to tell the difference.
Support for the 5th piece of the letter, supporting hemp. Supporting hemp. We'll take that as an indication that you're ready for the question. Are you ready for the question? No, we're not ready for the question.
Kate Dodge. This is just a minor request. Last summer when many Putney residents and visitors and others were waiting in lines for construction vehicles to allow them to pass, came to my attention that a member or more members of the Energy Committee were handing out energy tickets to people who were idling. And I would request that that not be done. I think it's kind of offensive. If people want to go around and request that they turn off their engines, I'm okay with that, but not issuing fake tickets. Thank you.
Further discussion, let's say right with the article that's before us, which is just, do we want to...
Well, a point of clarification, I was one of those people handing out information about idling. No tickets were ever handed out that I know of. There was just idling facts. Idling is a really big problem, not just in our neighborhood, in our state, but in our entire planet. So,
Alice Mays here, and I would like to add an amendment to number 1 to and/or at the end feed-in tariff. Now, the feed-in tariff is how Germany managed to get as much solar electric on their roofs as they currently have, and their cloud cover, or they're comparable to Alaska, and we have much more solar here. And as I understand, what a feed-in tariff does is that it guarantees a given amount of money per kilowatt hour. And so with that contract, a person who wants to put solar on their roof can take the contract to their banker, and the banker can give the loan because they know what the return on the investment will be. It's called a feed-in tariff. Thank you.
So is there a second to the motion to amend? It's accepted as a friendly amendment? Okay, then we don't need to vote on it. Similar to Green Mountain Power's 6 cents per kilowatt rate and/or feed-in tariff is the article that's now before you. The motion that's now before you. Any other discussion of the motion? Are you ready for the question? I'll read it. Do you have a copy of this? No. Okay, then I'll have to read it. Whereas the people of Putney, Vermont recognize the critical need for remedial action to restore and maintain a non-toxic natural environment beneficial to the well-being of all life on Earth, that's a period, on Earth. No financial, corporate, or political interest, no matter how powerful, shall legally override, hinder, or obstruct, or restrain the people of Putney, Vermont from this action. Therefore, we the people of Putney, Vermont, call on our elected officials to enact the following statewide initiatives. To establish an official statewide incentive program for solar electric power, similar to Green Mountain Power's 6 cents per kilowatt rate and/or feed-in tariff. 2, to fix the PACE program and begin funding renewable energy and weatherization projects through low-cost loans. 3, to enhance the bottle bill to include all bottles and cans, as well as all plastic containers, including juice and water bottles, and to establish mandatory recycling for businesses and schools for all bottles, cans, and paper products. 4, support the elimination of unnecessary idling of heavy-duty motor vehicles by passing S81 and H154. 5, to legalize hemp production and encourage the reintroduction of a statewide hemp industry for producing a variety of green products. All in favor of passing that motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and you've passed that. Other business to come before the meeting. You have another one. Go ahead.
Yeah, where I can lean in somewhere. Is this right? I'd like to first make an announcement and then ask you to pass a resolution. People from the Healthcare as a Human Right initiative have arrived, and there's a table that you'll pass on your way out. So you can get bumper stickers and buttons, and you can have your picture taken with this sign. You write your name on it. They take your picture with a Polaroid camera, and then you get sent around the state to other people on postcards, urging them to support the idea that health care is a human right. Also there are buttons and bumper stickers at the table adjoining the Transition Putney table. So I'll put this here. And And here is the text of this resolution. Will the Putney voters present support the Healthcare is a Human Right initiative and urge passage of H.R. 202, the single-payer health care bill, in the Vermont legislature?
Is there a second? Okay. Would you speak to the motion, please?
Well, the single payer is the least expensive. We pay so much money for health care, more in this country for health care than almost any other country in the world. And yet we don't, not everybody's covered. We all know that. And so this is a good opportunity, and our Putney boy, Governor Peter Shumlin, is all for this. And that we could be having everyone in Vermont covered under a less expensive plan. And so I would like us to support that. Any other questions?
Any discussion of the motion?
I'm a strong supporter of single-payer universal health care insurance. I don't know anything about this particular bill, so I hesitate to vote in favor of asking the legislature to vote on a proposal that I don't understand. Can you tell us anything more about the bill?
There is someone in the rear left, my left, who might be able to.
Do you know anything about this bill, Jeanette?
And somebody needs a workout.
I don't think so. H202 is the bill that I was talking about this morning. It's the administration's bill that's come. It's now in the House. It's being worked on between the administration, the House, and the Senate. And it is the bill that is the roadmap to a single-payer system that I talked about this morning, that will divorce it from employment, that will cover everybody pays in, everybody benefits. So that's basically what the bill is. It will be changed, certainly, from what it is right now until it's put into place, but it's the steps we need to get there.
Any further discussion of the motion? Could please address your comments to the moderator.
Hi. I'm Melanie Fletcher. I'm going to quiet down now. I just had a question about when that was to be implemented. When do you think we'll be seeing the beginning of all of that?
Boy, if I ran that fast every day, I'd probably be in better shape than I am now. The bill itself will end up being signed probably in May, before we leave the legislature. The different parts of it will be implemented at different times, because this is a really comprehensive bill, and like I said, it's a step, and it has different phases to it. I believe that our goal is to have everything in place and everybody covered and everything worked out by the end of 2013 or the beginning of 2014. So it isn't going to happen overnight, but that's the goal.
Other discussion? Are you ready for the question? Will the voters present support the Healthcare is a Human Rights initiative and urge passage of H.R. 202, the single-payer healthcare bill, in the Vermont legislature? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. We've passed that unanimously.
Ellen Kay again. Okay, I've drafted something that isn't perfect, but here it is. We, the people of Putney, stand with the teachers, social workers, nurses, firefighters, police, and other public sector workers in the state of Wisconsin, who today are defending their rights to organize and to collectively bargain. In our town meeting today, we have voted to fund public education and to increase our support of social service and community agencies, swimming against the tide of states across the U.S. who are increasingly adopting austerity measures which will undermine our social infrastructure. With this resolution, we affirm the social imperative of meeting the human needs of our communities.
Is there a second? Okay, can you bring that up, please?
Yes. And I have to say that my sister is a social worker, school social worker in Wisconsin, so I've been...
Aha, a little transparency is called for.
Yeah.
Any discussion of this motion? Let's limit it to relatively brief. Yep.
Could we say Putney, Vermont?
Didn't we say it? Okay, so in affirmative we have... Okay. Will you accept that as a friendly amendment? The people of Putney, Vermont? Okay. Seconders all accept that as a friendly amendment? Yes, okay. Any other conversation about this?
I'd also like to offer a friendly amendment in the statement about the public school bill, that we including the expansion of our public school program to include pre-K.
We have voted to fund public education and decrease our... okay, so we have voted to fund public education, increase our program offerings, our program to include pre-K. Okay. We'll take that as a friendly amendment. Any other discussion of the resolution?
I propose, Abe Noe Hayes, I propose to change pre-K to early education. I think that sounds a little more, a little less technical, a little more of the idea of what we're trying to accomplish is early education, so I'd propose that.
Is that accepted as a friendly amendment by everybody? Okay. Include early education.
Could I ask a procedural question?
Sure.
At what point do we discuss where this goes? Is that during this discussion or after?
Anytime you want. Go right ahead.
I would like to ask permission to send this statement to Wisconsin.
Okay.
And allow it to be disseminated. That would be my hope, as well as local.
Okay.
Do it locally.
Others? Who would do that? You would. Okay. Any other discussion of this resolution? Are you ready for the question? We, the people of Putney, Vermont, stand with the teachers, social workers, nurses, firefighters, police, and other public sector workers in the state of Wisconsin who today are defending their right to organize and collectively bargain. In our town meeting today, we have voted to fund public education, increase our programs to include early education, increase our support of social services and community agencies, swimming against the tide of states across the U.S. who are adopting austerity measures with this resolution. Adopting, a little comma problem here, who are adopting austerity measures which will undermine the social infrastructure, comma. With this resolution, we affirm the social imperative of meeting the human needs of our communities. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. I can't hear you. Aye. All opposed, please say nay. Thank you. You passed. By the way, I was chastised at lunch because I insisted that everybody say their name over and over, and I was told, well, you didn't say your name. So I'm Tom Ehrenberg, your moderator for the day. It's been swell. Peter May, who is your elected moderator, is far away, but we managed to get by without him. Is there any other business to come before the meeting?
Yes, I would like to, Eva Munden, I would like to thank Tom Ehrenberg for stepping in, willing to step in. You did it for years, and you're willing to come back. I know it's not something you want to continue doing, and we're looking forward to possibly, depending on how the election comes out today, that we may have Virginia Schultz, and she's in training today over here. I'd like to thank you. I'd like to thank Steve Werhey and the young chap who's been doing jogging. I don't know. What's your name? There you go. And also...
Baxter? It's Baxter Michael, right? Mike for short. Today we're calling you Mike. Oh.
And also I'd like to thank the people who are filming. I don't know what that's about. The people who come forward and work at the polls and at the town meeting. So oftentimes we forget to realize that those people are here. So the town, once again, the bones of the town is volunteer and sometimes paid positions. And also like to thank Anita for her consistent holding the town together as treasurer and clerk.
Thank you. Add to that list the central school staff, and in particular Tony Colvin, and the folks who work hard to set this up and
Hello, can I finish my resolution before we...
we certainly can. We have not adjourned.
Okay, sir. Shall I do that now?
Go right ahead.
I would like to enter this resolution. Whereas Vermont's external debt to non-native banks creates budget shortfalls and limitations to our growth, the people of Putney, Vermont urge our legislators to establish a Bank of Vermont that will make loans to Vermont for our needs and the benefit of interest returning to our Vermont State Treasury. The people of Putney ask our legislators to closely examine the model provided by North Dakota, the only state in the Union to have such a bank, and the only state to thrive with job growth and income growth during this great recession.
So that's a motion. I have a copy of it. Is there a second? Okay, that's it. Is there discussion of the resolution before you? Essentially establishing a Bank of Vermont, which will be available to make loans to the people of the state. Jeanette.
Jeanette White. I just want to give a little bit of information, and I think that this will go back to the legislature, and we will look at it. And it is something that we've been looking at anyway, but just one word about the Bank of North Dakota. One of the reasons that the Bank of North Dakota was so successful is because they did all the student loans in the state. They essentially did what VSAC did in Vermont. The ability to do that has been taken away by the federal government now, so that the loans are going to be made directly by the federal government to students instead of through banks. So there isn't going to be any income generated by those procedures either for the Bank of North Dakota or should there be a Bank of Vermont. So anything that's established will never be as profitable as it would have been before that happened, but we will look at all the issues.
Thank you. Other discussion about this resolution?
It is true that the Bank of North Dakota has anchored a lot of its loan policy towards supporting its student loans, but here in Vermont we have a lot of loan policy that could be created about creating our renewable efforts, and they could very well be very fruitful. It is true that the state of North Dakota established a bank in 1919 after the establishment of the Federal Reserve, and they are not even FDIC insured. But I do believe it will be very beneficial for Vermont to get a financial independence from Wall Street, and I'd like to urge our legislators to do that. I hope you support
In
this.
favor of the motion. Other discussion of the motion? Pros, cons? I'll read it to you. Whereas Vermont's external debt to non-native banks creates budget shortfalls and limitations to our growth, the people of Putney, Vermont, urge our legislators to establish a Bank of Vermont that will make loans to Vermont for our needs with the benefit of interest returning to our Vermont State Treasury. The people of Putney ask our legislators to closely examine the model provided by North Dakota, the only state in the Union to have such a bank, and the only state to thrive with job growth and income growth during the Great Recession. Are you ready for the question? Urging the legislators to establish a public Vermont bank. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You've passed the resolution. Are you ready for other business that might legally come before the meeting?
Arthur Westing. I'd like to make a new motion, and the motion is to add the word Vermont to that Egypt, Libya, Tunisia, and so on resolution. It's really a matter of clarification. We have just come from a different Putney yesterday, we were in Putney, England. Now we're in Putney, Vermont, so I think it's important that the word Vermont gets stuck into that. It doesn't change the intent. In fact, it clarifies it.
This is a motion to reconsider, which is somewhat torturous. What I'm going to do is ask for a sense of the meeting rather than go through the 3 or 4 steps that we need to do to actually reconsider and revote and so on. So is the sense of the meeting that it would be good for the writers to make it very clear that this comes from Putney, Vermont? Okay, so I'll leave that up to the disseminators to deal with it, because reconsidering an item we've already passed it's not worth it, believe me. Okay, other business to come legally before the meeting.
Pat Shields, I just wanted to thank everybody for your support of the PCS Four Winds Nature Program fundraiser today. If you bought lunch, bought goodies, donated goodies, made soups, thank you very much.
Do we have a total?
We are over $900 right now.
And I assume, do we have any raffle tickets left back there? There are still raffle tickets where you can make an investment of $20 and get a return of $1,000. Only in Putney, Vermont. Any other business to come before the meeting? Yes, there is.
I move that we adjourn.
I'll accept a motion to adjourn. You're anticipating. There's a second in the back. Actually, it doesn't even need a second. All in favor of adjournment, please say aye. Aye. Thank you all so much.